The news day continues here on One News Now. I'm Charles Lejano. More vaccine doses from the COVAX facility are arriving in the Philippines today as the government seeks to accelerate its vaccination efforts. The Philippines is expected to receive its first batch of the Pfizer vaccine from the WHO-led facility at around 9:30 p.m. Over 190,000 Pfizer doses are expected to arrive, and this makes Pfizer the fourth brand of COVID-19 vaccine in the Philippines. The Health Department says supplies will be shipped to Metro Manila, Metro Cebu, and Metro Davao, as well as other provinces with ultra-cold storage capacity. The temperature requirement to store Pfizer vaccines is at -80 degrees Celsius. And over the weekend, the COVAX also shipped some 2 million doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine to the country. Vaccine czar Carlito Galvez says the latest supply provides a boost to the country's vaccination drive, as more than 500,000 AstraZeneca shots will be allotted for healthcare workers who are due to get their second dose of the vaccine in the coming weeks. Galvez emphasized that the latest supply is still intended for the first 3 priority groups. Meanwhile, Galvez admits that the government is facing challenges in establishing the mega vaccination site at Nayong Pilipino. The project was set to start construction weeks ago, but it was delayed due to technical and legal concerns raised by the Nayong Pilipino Foundation. The NPF also raised concerns on the facility's possible impact on the environment. For Galvez, officials are failing to see the bigger picture as they are caught up in such technicalities. The government reiterates that the planned mega vaccination center at Nayong Pilipino will enable the vaccination of 10,000 individuals daily. Pope Francis has joined calls to lift intellectual property protection for COVID-19 vaccines. But how did other world leaders react to this proposal? Let's find out in this video from Bloomberg.
It's great news. That's tremendous news. And where you've heard what the New South Wales government has said about mRNA vaccines, you've heard what we've said about it. It was last night I was on one of my regular calls with many of the European leaders, as well as from Israel and New Zealand and a few others. And we regularly discuss these issues and setting up our own manufacturing capabilities.
Je suis tout à fait favorable à ce qu'il y ait en effet cette ouverture de la propriété intellectuelle. Vous m'avez entendu le dire il y a un an, quand nous avons lancé l'initiative Acte A. Véritablement permettre à ce que la propriété intellectuelle soit levée. Ce que j'ai dit simplement...
The European Union is also ready to discuss any proposal that address the crisis in an effective and pragmatic manner. And that's why we are ready to discuss how the US proposal for waiver on intellectual property protection for COVID vaccines could help achieve that objective.
Вот сейчас мы слышим, в Европе есть идеи, которые, на мой взгляд, заслуживают внимания, а именно снять вообще патентную защиту с вакцин против COVID-19. И это не только не противоречит, но, насколько я понимаю, соответствует определенным правилам Всемирной торговой организации, которые предусматривают снятие подобной патентной защиты в чрезвычайных обстоятельствах. Но пандемия – это и есть чрезвычайная ситуация. Поэтому, Татьяна Алексеевна, я бы попросил вас тоже с коллегами посмотреть на это, проработать. Безусловно, Россия бы поддержала такой подход.
Es ist eine Diskussion, für die wir offen sind. Wir sind im Moment in einer außergewöhnlichen Situation, in der es darum geht, die Welt mit ausreichend Impfstoffen zu versorgen. Es gibt, wie Sie selber gesagt haben, unterschiedliche Hinweise, dass es im Moment in der ersten Linie um die Ausweitung von Produktionsstätten geht, dort wo sie schon sind, um sie auszuweiten, um die Verbesserung der Lieferketten, um auf die Art und Weise dafür zu sorgen, dass mehr Menschen in den Genuss von Impfstoff kommen.
Meanwhile, most people who contract COVID-19 will only experience mild symptoms and can recover in their own homes. But what is the standard treatment protocol if you have COVID-19 and are caring for someone or yourself at home? The World Health Organization tells us in this video.
If If you're caring for a COVID patient at home, what is the treatment protocol? Hello, I'm Vismita Gupta-Smith, and this is Science in 5, talking about how to care for a patient at home. The treatment protocol for COVID-19 care at home is Dr. Janet Diaz. Welcome, Janet.
Thanks for having me on this important session.
Janet, please explain the treatment protocol for COVID care at home.
So if a patient with COVID-19 is going to be cared for at home, there are a few important things to consider. One is the patient should be in isolation, meaning that we don't want that patient to transmit the virus to other people. Number two is you may have a fever. So if you have a fever, you can take symptomatic treatments or antipyretics or drugs that reduce fevers to keep you comfortable. So that's okay. The third is to eat and drink sufficiently, so make sure you stay hydrated. Make sure that you maintain some good eating habits, eat what you like, but ensure to keep yourself well-nourished and well-hydrated. Most patients who get COVID-19 will have no complications from it acutely, may not develop severe pneumonia, may not need to go to the hospital, and that's good. But we do know there are a few patients, with mostly those who have risk factors for severe disease. These patients are at risk for developing severe disease. So these patients, if they're being monitored at home, need to carefully watch your symptoms. There's one thing I do want to emphasize. SARS-CoV-2, we know, is a virus. So if you have COVID-19, then in patients that are being managed at home, we don't recommend the use of antibiotics. That means medicines that treat bacterial infections, because it's a virus infection, so it won't respond to an antibiotic.
Janet, we're seeing an increased demand of medicines like remdesivir, and also increased appeals for plasma therapy in the treatment of COVID-19. Please tell us what the evidence is telling us about the effectiveness of both remdesivir and plasma therapy.
At this moment in time, we have a recommendation against the use of remdesivir for patients with COVID-19 because there was low certainty in the evidence that it had any benefit in mortality. For convalescent plasma, we don't actually have a recommendation in that guideline specifically yet, but what we do have in the clinical management guideline is also against its use unless under clinical trials, as evidence is accumulating on those interventions. So we also do not recommend its use other than under clinical trials, which are continuing and ongoing.
The DILG is warning local chief executives that they will be held accountable for violations of minimum health protocols, such as mass gatherings in their jurisdictions. The agency says delinquent local officials may face administrative or even criminal charges for dereliction of duty if they fail to strictly impose IATF-issued quarantine guidelines. Secretary Eduardo Año said local government units play a critical role in enforcing mass gathering regulations, as they are nearer to their constituents compared to the national government. The department is also urging the public to immediately file complaints against erring local chief executives directly to the DILG and its regional offices. Over in Caloocan, a popular resort has been shut down for operating at full capacity despite the prohibition on non-essential or leisure activities. Over 1,000 people, including kids, flocked to the Gubat sa Ciudad resort in North Caloocan yesterday. As early as 6 in the morning, the resort had already reached full capacity, but the resort continued to accept guests until 1 p.m., forcing visitors to crowd their swimming pools while completely disregarding social distancing protocols. As photos spread around social media, the Caloocan city government decided to revoke the resort's license to operate. Police officers and barangay officials trooped to the resort at around 4 in the afternoon to order its immediate closure. Some disgruntled patrons of the resort took out their anger on a TV5 cameraman who was taking videos of the massive quarantine violation. Recall that resorts are only allowed to operate in GCQ and MGCQ areas. Caloocan is currently under MECQ as part of the NCR Plus bubble. Some residents also flocked the Baseco Beach over the weekend as parts of the country continue to experience extreme hot weather. Some people were spotted crowding in the beach, while others were caught maskless, even outside the water. Some residents say they decided to cool off at the Baseco Beach after they ran out of water in their own homes. The Philippine Coast Guard reminded them that swimming in the Baseco Beach is still not allowed, not only because of quarantine restrictions, but also because of its water quality. Yesterday, maximum humidity or heat index was recorded in Dagupan City, Pangasinan at 49 degrees Celsius. This was followed by Sangley Point in Cavite, which experienced heat at 46 degrees Celsius. Pag-asa says other areas that have experienced extreme heat on Sunday were Batangas, Pasay City, Western Samar, and Clark, Pampanga. Miss Universe Brazil is winning the hearts of Filipino pageant fans after she spoke to them online in Tagalog. In an Instagram post, Miss Universe Brazil 2020, Julia Gama, greeted Filipino pageant fans in Tagalog, saying Mabuhay Pilipinas. Gama also thanked her supporters in the Philippines and said she can't wait to meet our very own Miss Universe Philippines, Rabia Mateo. Let's hear the message of Miss Brazil to her Filipino fans.
Mabuhay, Pilipinas! Kumusta? Ako po si Julia Gama, ang Miss Universe ng Brazil. Maraming salamat sa lahat ng suporta. Mahal ko kayo!
And those are the top stories at this hour. Join us again later at 12 noon as we continue to monitor the day's biggest stories. You can also catch One News on Signal Play. Register for a free account at www.signalplay.com and stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Charles Lejano. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. We're One News.